All right. Hello, everyone, and we're back on the OSTC PTG, and we're back with our last couple of topics for this Flamingo PTG. The first one of which is finding contributors in some projects has been hard. This has been proposed by Gansham and Sylvain. So, which one of you wants to go first and explain this?
Hello. Sorry, I missed that. Do you want me to start or
Yeah,
sorry,
Gansham,
okay?
go for it.
Yeah. So this came up like when we have this QA PTL election, and we used to have Martin taking care of PTL and also helping in Tempest and other QA tools along with me and Frickler also as two. And but he changed the responsibility. Now it's just me and Frickler, and as you know, we both also have the shared bandwidth with a lot of other tasks. And it came up like in case if say if either of one change the role or something, then we might have QA, in the risk of maintaining. So the if you see in the QA, we have specifically two tools or two projects are more active: Tempest and DevStack. Grenade require very less changes, mostly on the releases, and all other projects are not so maintenance burden. But if we see in Tempest, I'm the only active core there, and in DevStack, if you say Frickler is there, me is there. But it has been always shortage of maintainer in QA. We have kept raising this uh, challenge everywhere, and also
I know it's 2 minutes
pushing.
in.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
Hello,
just see who is back. Try to help
Doug.
wrangle
You're
the cats.
okay. Maybe
Sorry, just a
Doug
sec.
is talking to
Let
someone.
Yes, I think
It's
so.
okay.
I can mute him.
No
Go for
problem.
it.
So, and we have all kept adding it as a upstream opportunities since starting. I don't know how much benefit they are, but we have kept adding the QA as an upstream opportunity. But this cycle is, having just two member, and it's on the risk line, I will say. And at least we should, discuss or we should communicate it to more to the companies, organization, or contributors that we need help in QA. We have done in many ways, multiple platform, newsletters, board of director, TC, releases, PTG, everywhere. But definitely, I'll appreciate if there is any new idea. And as a TC, we can drive, to bring some more contributor in QA. And QA, just one example. If you see, uh, like the requirement team, release team, right, and even the our infra team, Fungi Clark, they are always being on top of that, including Fickler, but we didn't see the new people helping there also. So there are the few areas, which are not directly customer consumed by organizations. They are the support team, you can say, in community, and always companies take less priority on contributing them. So yeah, that's the current situation, and we can discuss if something new idea we can have to solve it.
Yeah, this seems like the problem with cross-project efforts, right? Like the QA release management requirements and Oslo. These seem to be across different project teams, and we see this problem often with any cross-project roles because things are difficult, and I'm not sure if you know the regular investors in this sort of thing, which are companies that are you know piping developer resources to specific project teams don't see perhaps the importance of cross project efforts.
Yeah, the cross project work also, like one thing comes in it. Oslo is a good example. I know Doug raised hand, just wanted to reply before that. So it's a both, like cross project team where projects can, help, uh, and other thing again, like in QA or say release requirement, we need specific maintainers to help, right? We cannot ask projects to take care of all these stuff also. So that's why like they are separate team, right? So we need help from both side, new maintainer from company's organization and some help from project side too.
Doug, go for it.
I mean, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, because I mean that's not a new problem, right? But I'm thinking about the incentives that we should be doing. Like it should be magic. Like people won't appear by magic. Maybe I mean I don't know, but I'm thinking about I don't know either documenting or telling a story. What I mean by that is that QA and Tempest is not here because we like it. This is because every single bug that we find due to a CI failure is better than finding a bug on some kind of downstream usage for like some operator or some customer. So for me, I mean, our companies should know that if they have some people checking their specific environments, that's good, but maybe they should be thinking about testing that directly by upstream, because when they test it, it's basically late. In general, for operators, I know that they test, I mean, I don't really know how many companies that we test, for example, epoxy by now. In general, they test like a specific release like 4 years before, or maybe 2 years before, maybe 5 was too much. But so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm pretty sure that most of our operators try to test the releases. Maybe they use also Tempest. I don't know. I think Tempest can be used for any company, right? So basically, if they already use Tempest, they already know about Tempest. So maybe they should be also thinking about that. That basically, if they do that upstream, it should be better. So what I'm saying is that we basically know about that, right? Each of us know about that, but I wonder, maybe we should be saying that. Jiman?
just a second before Gansham, I think Doug had his hand on for a bit.
I was just gonna say the pattern that I feel like I'm finding, again, I feel like I'm a Debbie Downer because I'm just bringing stuff up without any real solutions. I feel like there's a lot of general distrust between a lot of the projects, which is the big projects, if you will. Like don't nobody take this as personally, or I'm just going to use examples like, let's say Nova and Neutron, right? Like Nova and Neutron have a distrust of each other, right? And that then is causing slowness and problems in those cross projects, and those requirements types projects as well, because of that. I don't know how to necessarily break down those barriers. I I do I would like to maybe float out for future PTGs. I know we had a lot of um, conflict, of times for a lot of the big projects, and that some of the projects organize their own thing, and we kind of had a discussion in the TC channel about some of that. But maybe we could reserve a day for, really there's only two rooms available, and that day there's the forcing of a bunch of cross project discussion. I think that would maybe help the projects a little bit, something like that. And then I will say another item that at least I feel like has been a blocker, at least for myself contributing some just documentation fixes, like I was talking about that secure RBAC, right? Like I can't get even small wording into some projects. Perfect is the enemy of good, um, in a lot of reviewers, and I don't think that helps. Um, that we've I remained persistent on some of those changes, and got that in after 4 months, uh, for essentially a couple of sentence change that was referencing something that was removed in Ubuntu 16.04, right? But then they wanted me to change a half a dozen other places, on that doc, that was really unrelated to that, but it was other things that were now outdated. So make the rest of the doc no longer updated, right? That was a lot of extra burden on me, and I have other employees that work there, and I've heard that same feedback, that reviewers have chased them down about that, and I think a possibility there that I really would like to push back to even like the PTLs and others is accept that contributors change, and we have a bug tracker. Go make a bug about the fact that that should be revisited, and encourage that contributor to do a follow up rather than having everything in one change. That's all.
Yeah. So I think Kancham, you had your hand up.
Yeah, there's two things. One, regarding the Tempest production usage, Selvin mentioned. So we knew the AT&T, when they were using OpenStack or contributing in OpenStack, they use Tempest a lot in their production testing, and there are many companies they still use Tempest in their production. But what I have observed, even though we have communicated when we used to have face-to-face events, PTG and another, they think like it comes up as a complementary tool with OpenStack services. You don't need to maintain these. So that's the perception they have. And that's something we kept telling. It's still a tool. We do a release. We need maintainers here. Even though there is a framework set, you don't need to change the framework, add the new things more. But still, whenever there is a feature development in project side, they do implement the test in Tempest or Tempest plugins, and that is a part of that feature release about their stability or testing it at upstream. But yes, Tempest was used in production, but I have not seen any company other than the AT&T in past. That's very long back. Other than that, I have not seen any other company who is using Tempest is contributing or maintaining the Tempest. Red Hat, yes, they maintain a lot, obviously. I was maintaining as part of NEC, even though we didn't use Tempest, but somewhere our company agenda was to help in QA also. And there are few more folks, and not just Tempest in QA also. they might be contributing, even though that is not their first job requirement. And regarding the second point Doug mentioned, so there are the two things here. One is the, like, say, the cross project for the new features or the new work or the integration is thing. So I'm not much worried about that. Obviously, that's a good thing to solve. You should have a specific cross project sessions and all those stuff. But here, what we are facing is the team where we need maintainers, which are, on the edge of being unmaintained or can go unmaintained in future. And that team, QA is one, then Keystone, Oslo, we know it has been always been on the edge, and someone, we have only, say, new one or two contributors maintaining them mostly. Release management requirement also been there. Release management might have a lot more folks compared to all other teams. So what I would like to bring, like, before, we get a surprise thing, like, okay, there's one maintainer in, say, Keystone or in the Tempest or in requirement, and they are gone, and immediately there is no one to take over. That will be hard for TC to ask someone, okay, can you take over that one, because they don't know the insight of those process and framework or tooling. So that will be a, a kind of a big impact on our that deliverable and on that development release. Before that, if someone we can find and they can come up, start contributing, whatever existing maintainer currently we have, they can start involving them in the process and all. Because these teams, I don't see any more new features are coming, new things are coming. It's all most of the maintenance of existing framework. In Tempest also, if you see, the framework is set, everything is set. If, say, for example, no implementing feature, no developers, no team contributing the Tempest test there, right? Ironic doing it in the Ironic Tempest plugin. So it's more about, like, we need one or two hands to maintain, to review those test cases, to merge that, to keep eyes on CI/CD. So it's not a 8-hour job per day, maximum, like, say, 1 hour or something, but we need the folks there. And before, any surprise comes, TC should, like, think seriously on this and at least plan some resources where we have the existing maintainer there.
Sorry, I'm being pinged on the OSI channel, so I basically need to go there. Jim, I didn't definitely understand your point. Sorry, I know that there was raised hands, but because I basically need to join another channel before I leave, I just want to say, basically, I definitely agree with you. Basically, the problem here is that maybe the projects also should be thinking about what you said, like if they provide like Tempest tests or something like that, maybe they should be thinking about maybe maintaining Tempest as well. I mean, I don't find any solution yet, and I agree with what we said. Maybe like next PTG, we should be having this kind of cross-project discussions. I already said that, like, for example, for eventlet, for other stuff, definitely, because eventlet discussion was during the Nova meeting. So I definitely will be loving like a cross-project day, like we did on the previous PTGs. Anyway, sorry guys, I definitely need to go, and then I will be back at the top of the hour.
Sure, thanks. Clark?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I feel like a lot of the like underlying perspective issue here is that most people, I think, contributing to OpenStack don't identify as an OpenStack contributor, right? It's, I work on Nova, I work on Ironic, I work on Glance, or whatever it is, right? Like it's, and what that does is it sets us up for failure in the commons, right? Because you don't identify as a, or not anyone in particular, but because the see as like the typical OpenStack developer doesn't identify as an OpenStack developer, the commons are no one's priority, right? And part of that, maybe it's just too much work to justify it at a management level. Management says I can add a feature to Nova or I can fix a bug in Nova. That's what's important to me. Like justifying that I'm an OpenStack developer is too hard. But it does feel like as we face these problems and as time goes on, to me, it seems like if we don't make that shift to getting the vast majority of us to see ourselves as OpenStack developers rather than the individual projects that we have been contributing to, like that, like we're just setting ourselves up for more and more failure, right? And that's just because the commons requires people to care about the commons, and that starts with identifying with that in the first place. Anyway, I'll hand off to whoever was next.
Slavik.
Thanks. So just one thing regarding the lack of co-reviewers and for Tempest, especially. Maybe I remember, I mean, in OpenStack SDK and OpenStack client, there is some kind of concept of project liaisons or something like that. So there are people who are co-reviewers on the OpenStack client and which are basically reviewing parts related to the project, like I or Lajos are such co-reviewers, and Artom usually pings us when there are some patches related to networking, to Neutron, and I know other teams have someone similar in this team. Maybe for Tempest it should be similar, and we should have kind of co-reviewers responsible from the projects, responsible or helping reviewing parts related to this project only.
Yeah, it's a good point. I am not sure. Jitsi tells me who's next. Jay, Julia, and Gansham have their hands up. Go for it, Jay.
Some of this kind of feeds back into what Doug was alluding to a little bit, right? Working on the commons, and I'm specifically thinking about requirements because that's the only place I've really invested any time into trying to help out there. It's difficult to do because it's difficult to get things merged. Even if I take the time to understand an OpenStack project that maybe my downstream doesn't use, but I'm trying to be a good community member, and now I'm tracking down people for weeks to try to get that change merged. This is not uncommon because if it breaks with a new requirement, it's often one of the projects that's kind of more on the edges, less supported. Meanwhile, I then have to justify to my bosses why I'm delivering less ironic features because I am much more effective as an ironic developer where I have contacts where I know things will get merged. So like I care that this stuff gets done, but when you mix the fact that like you're usually massively more effective working on your primary project, and so you're able to sort of justify that time a little better, it makes it really hard to work on the commons because not only is it you're not working on stuff that you can draw a straight line from, you know, who you work for to value, and in some cases that line may not exist at all. I'm just trying to help, you know, get requirements up or something. Not only am I working on stuff they don't care as much about, I'm getting a lot less of it done because I'm spending so much more time tracking down reviews and things like that. So again, I feel like Doug. I'm like, the bad news, police, is I don't have a good solution to this, but it is extremely difficult to work in a project like requirements and be effective without spending a massive amount of your time chasing down reviews and things like that, which is just really tough to justify when I could use that time to deliver a feature that impacts my operators, you know, in that same time in ironic.
So I guess it's my turn. Doug alluded to this to an extent as well, and ultimately it's the scope creep of the review. And we actually did a whole thing, I guess, around 2017, 2018, where we're like, please don't nitpick people to death. Don't increase the scope. Just take the needful good and move forward and update yourself or follow up, create a bug, do whatever. And I feel like we're kind of hard careening into, we want perfection again. And the reality is that you're not going to help. You're not going to welcome a drive-by contribution if you're not willing to just incrementally improve things. It's going to be harder for people to gain any velocity. You're going to lose value for your employer if you go to do a one-line thing and then you get told, I need to do 6 other things in the same file because I'm touching the file. That's really bad reviewer behavior. And that's culture. And that is ultimately that's the TC's responsibility to try and reset those expectations. And so we should be trying to move everyone together and trying to get on the same page and take an incremental approach. I realize at the same time, some people want perfection. It's not always going to be the case, and it's not always the right thing. And I don't know how to change that other than basically start trying to provide feedback in like managerial channels of, hey, here's what's going on. This is really frustrating. And there's no guarantee contributors will even heed that or act upon that feedback. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about growing toxicity, and we should call it out and be mindful of it and try and manage it. Ultimately, toxicity is what will kill projects and what will harm OpenStack, and perception of toxicity will repel users and repel businesses from expressing interest or making investments.
Yeah, certainly that's something that the community does not want. Kancham?
Yeah, just reply to the Slavic idea. So about like adding the core, like having the model like STK has. So in Tempest, like the problem is not that changes are not is merging, and if any project is submitting the test that cannot be merged, so that is happening. Means today I'm keep eyes on every changes if it's in the shape, soul is passing, and everything is fine. And even I'm almost reduced my 50%, being the Tempest test requirement or perfection compared to I used to be. So if test is there, it's passing, its runtime is good and everything, I merge it. And if anything follow up is required on that, I myself do the follow up and fix it. So I have, I'm trying to, uh, make the test cases much faster, or any other make changes much faster. And if obviously, like I don't know everything on every project, so if for example mostly the Neutron, if there are some changes coming from Neutron, I just add few of the Neutron folks there and they review it, they give +1 and I merge it. So that is not something the problem we are facing currently. Maybe in future, and that idea might be valid. But the problem here is like in QA, especially the one good example in the every release QA has to set up DevStack, Grenade, Tempest for the new stable branch for the current master. So those kind of maintenance work is someone like we need a person there. I cannot expect Slavic comes up and do the QA setup for every release, or I can expect Gotham comes and do it the every release. If there is a Manila test case or Manila like changes, I can ping Gotham, I can ping Slavic, right? So the problem there I felt like is more about a someone like who understand the process and take care of all these the manual works we have in every release. And obviously if the test cases are coming, keep merging them, keep reviewing them. So those stuff also. But yeah, definitely I am not against of that idea. But if we face that in future, maybe that's a good thing TC can consider, like SDK like model. But still, if we add core some of the projects as a core and they can merge their test case, still we need a dedicated maintainer who does all those paperwork on every release and every other things.
Yeah, and just kind of to give the alternate to what Julia said is like, and I put this in comments, like for me, as a regular contributor, like my problem is not getting nitpicky code reviews. Like I'm happy to update stuff, whatever. But the problem is more that they sit in silence. And especially when that happens on a team that's obviously active in merging other patches, it feels like sort of a mode of quiet ignoring. But really the bigger problem is that there's nothing that we can do. There's no amount of like motivation we can give a project whose only primary contributor is like a PTL trying to keep it in the OpenStack release with minimal effort. And this is sort of the long tail failure case for stuff like requirements and other pieces of the commons. And that slowest project that's consuming those items and need changes for it is the maximum velocity of those commons pieces. And without cleaning up those less active projects, without ensuring that projects are well resourced before they can consume those commons, we're going to continue having this type of problem. And again, that's even ignoring the cases where like your code doesn't get reviewed because it's not someone's priority or things of that nature. But I want to say that I don't think that people being mean in code reviews is as big of a problem as the code review never happening or happening with weeks or months of latency.
Clark.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's not that there's absolutely nothing we could do, right? Like we as the larger collective could take over. Like there are ways that we could essentially say, well, this is a thing that is important and vital to the broader community, and so now this other group, if you can find, see, that's the trick though, right? Is if you can find people who are willing to help out more. I guess I just want to note there are things that we could do. They're maybe a bit more drastic than we have done in the past, but maybe those things should be considered at this point, right? Like, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there as like, there's nothing we can do, but the options are kind of scary.
When you say scary, do you mean the potentially adverse or opinion setting changes that may be very visible, that may upset people as well, but may be also the right thing to do?
Yeah, well, like just in the case of say requirements or QA, right? These projects are largely like there's very few people hours involved in them. They are currently vital to the way that we develop the rest of the software because you need things to work in CI to merge code. Maybe the TC says we're responsible for this now, and we can flip a switch and now there's 7 new core reviewers or whatever the number is, right? Like that is something that we have tried to avoid within the community over the years, but it is an option. And it is maybe something that should be considered for these critical kind of, I don't want to call them core components because core has been so overloaded, but right, like in order to merge any code within OpenStack, you need the QA project and the requirements project to be functional. Today, the way things are structured. Another option would be to change the structure of how you merge code within OpenStack. That's also a very drastic and scary change, right? But these are things that maybe should be considered at least, and then either you move forward with them or you decide that they don't work for whatever reason and move on.
Jeremy?
I was just going to say, for example, I could set aside some of the other things I'm working on and agree to start focusing on reviewing changes in specific projects that are critical but have no velocity, and take the philosophy of if it clearly fixes a bug and comes with a regression test, I approve it with minimal review. And if it doesn't do those things, then I reject it. And that solves the problem of reviews not happening. It may not be the best experience for people who are proposing changes, but on the other hand, it's probably better than the alternative. But there are extremes that we could take to just go ahead and either approve or reject changes and not bother so much with the in-depth review process, because if there's not enough volunteers to keep these things maintained, then it's either that or close the projects down.
So I was going to ask you to elaborate on what you meant by the negative, the unhappy case, but you just did in the very end. And I think there are cases where we probably need to make some tough decisions, and it's okay to change. It's okay to say, hey, we had this vision years down in the past. The vision changes, or to embrace new integrations that may replace an entire component. That's okay. The key is ultimately providing value to our end users, and maintaining a working process to get to that point. If we're not doing the needful to maintain things, then we're ultimately doing a disservice and reducing our value. And that's kind of the key aspect I think we need to be keeping in mind. How do we deliver more value? That's the critical thing we need to also be trying to answer.
All right. I think we're slowing down on this topic, but if you folks have anything more to add, I think we can spend a couple of minutes. One thing I was thinking of was, I mean, if it makes sense, the TC did start tracking gate failures across all of the projects, just so that we could be expedient in trying to bridge communication and start focusing resources on specific areas where we see that we have these massive gate failures that's badly affecting that project team or multiple project teams. So let's go fix it, right? And this comes up every week, and that's kind of made things a priority across the TC. And we work with the release team, the QA team, and so on, uh, and on coordinating fixes and just advertising that we're doing this. So we could do the same thing with project activity too. Um, how maybe through those dashboards, and we kind of see somebody brings up a change that's been debated on too many times. Somebody's brings up things that are being nitpicked on in some project team, and we can just extend the visibility of it across the community. It's sadly gonna shame some people, I suppose, but I think for the betterment of the whole community itself, the TC is so far not looked at specific instances. I know individuals have. I know folks have chimed in random project team channels where there have been no responses to reviews and so on. But I think we can start doing that as a weekly activity. All right. Thanks for adding your notes there. I'll round up after that, and we can. If there are any more comments on this, going once, going twice. Perfect. All right. Let's move on to the next topic on line 297, which is around splintering conversations. Seems very broad, but let me give you a context of what is going on. So I think this came up at the Open Infra Days with the operators in the room and such, that were telling us that the place we chat was not completely feasible for them. I mean, IRC's networks were blocked, and they use Slack, they use Discord, they use lots of other tools, including social media tools and so on, to actually have productive conversations. So I suppose I think other people can describe this situation better as to why we need to change this. But it was something that we thought we could bring up to the TC room, so we can have some opinions. Julia, go for it.
So it's on some level, it's not even a tool preference issue, and there is an overall disconnect which exists. And I'm not expecting the TC to solve this. I'm not expecting the board to solve it. I'm actually surprised by the board's response to the challenge. So I'm going to kind of backfill some context too for a moment. Ultimately, a lot of what these operators are experiencing is they have legal and regulatory compliance requirements that block their ability to do certain things. And a lot of times it's going to mean that all their key keyboard entries logged. The apps they use have to support recording their transactional history. The employer needs to know if data has leaked out of the building or not. So certain websites even get blocked, like Matrix, IRC Cloud. In fact, one operator pointed out, like, if I try and load my IRC Cloud account that I have on my work machine locks down as if it's been compromised. So these are all different situations that these people have to live with. They have to exist with. And I don't think there's any mandate to change. What I think is we have to be willing to use more than one thing to build community. And that's kind of the key aspect that I'm trying to get across to people is can't just draw our line at our preferred tools. We need to build bridges.
Yeah, I'm going to second that with a couple of anecdotes. I know that there are engineers in my downstream operational environment who literally take a personal laptop to work and have it sitting on their desk open, connected to the guest Wi-Fi so that they can be a part of our community in IRC. And that's asking them a lot. The other thing I'll observe is I frequently mentor new people in the community, usually MLH fellows, but through different paths. And IRC has been one of the recurring hangups of like just adding another little bit of friction to getting people onboarded. And like Julia referenced kind of to the side, like using IRC Cloud with a commercial account does like sort of buffer that somewhat, but I don't think we have a good answer for that general problem of how do we get people in a chat platform that doesn't require massive amounts of teaching them about a 1980s, 1990s technology, and that will be able to be penetrated through some corporate firewalls.
So I think it sounds like there's really kind of two separate but interrelated issues here. The first is strict business controls, either from regulation or simply business policy, that limit how people can interact with the outside world, whether that's us or anyone else. The other that I'm kind of seeing pop up here in the discussion and on the Etherpad is that IRC in particular is a difficult thing for people who haven't used it before to get involved in. And these things may overlap, but they're kind of two distinct issues. I think the first issue, the regulatory business policy, strict rules problem, like from where I sit, I feel like that isn't our battle to solve. I feel like what we should do as a community is provide reasonable tools that address communications issues, provide several, alternatives to the tools, and then consider that, we are making an effort here that's reasonable for a community of our size with the effort involved, so on and so forth. And if your business can't figure that out, I mean, we can't boil the ocean, right? It's not just one company is going to say, well, Slack is okay because we pay Slack to log everything. Another is going to say, well, Microsoft Teams is okay because we pay Microsoft to do all of that. Another is going to say, this other third-party tool is the thing, right? Like that's so business specific that I feel it's on the businesses to solve. As long as we make a reasonable effort, and that kind of ties into the second thing, which is that IRC is difficult to use for people who haven't used it before. I think, yeah, sure, like the internet has kind of moved beyond that. Everything is HTTP now, and click, 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 keyboards are used less and less. And I think Matrix does kind of fill that, I don't want to call it a void because IRC works for those that it works for, but it fits into that space in a lot of ways that makes existing IRC users happy. I use Matrix and IRC, and I'm happy with both. But it is also a lot more welcoming because it's got a web app and there's persistent logging and so on and so forth. And so I guess from where I'm sitting, I feel as a community, we should make a reasonable effort to make communication possible. We have email lists, we have IRC, we can have Matrix, we've got this Meetpad server. Like we have these tools, we have alternatives to each of those tools, and then document how to use them, right? And it's up to the business to figure out, like, if because we can't run a Slack, we can't run a Teams, we can't do all of those things for every individual business that has an employee that wants to talk to us. It's just not reasonable, in my opinion. And this is coming from the perspective of someone who's tried to run these tools for the last, I don't know, it's over a decade at this point, right? Like, it would just burn you out, is like the point. Like, you stick to the things that we can make work, give people the tools to connect via those methods, documentation, training, whatever, but don't try to boil the ocean.
So I don't think anyone's trying to boil the ocean. I think that it's an easy perception to have, though. The goal ultimately also needs to be that we are willing to build some bridges. If we are unwilling to build bridges, then we can't meet people halfway. And if we can't meet people halfway, then why would they engage? And I think that's kind of the mental challenge that we've got, because we're also stuck in our ways. And it's okay. We have solutions and things that fit our needs and requirements. At the same time, the world has moved on with many technologies. And we can provide some avenues and aspects, but like, for example, there's a scientific SIG Slack, independently managed. You have to invite, it's logged through Matrix, through a connector. They're not paying for it. And basically, that's where I can go and see, the scientific discussions, because a lot of those operators have Slack because their organizations use Slack, so it just shows up as another icon for them. Their clients locally log, it's all good for their records requirements and everything else, and they're just able to collaborate at that level. And that's really powerful, to be willing to go and go, hey, what's going on? Oh, got this. Oh, let me go talk to folks in IRC. And sometimes the answer is, I forgot IRC even existed. So it's like, we have to do better with communication. We can't just stick to the things we're known that we're the most comfortable with. We have to grow, we have to spread, we have to be willing to build half a bridge. And that's really where I'm at, and where I kind of take a lot of, I guess I'm getting really stressed out by the fact that we refuse to change as a community. And we've got operators going, I can't use any of the tools that you've mentioned, but I can use Slack. And so it becomes a this versus that, or that's not free argument. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's a tool. It helps solve a problem. It doesn't necessarily going to solve all problems. If we want to solve all problems, then we're boiling the ocean. And anything is better than nothing at the same time.
Yep. Thanks, Julia. Doug?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's a broader thing than just saying IRC and Matrix and all that. I think, more broadly speaking, it's also bug tracking. I think it's the docs, as well. But there's a lot that OpenStack does a little different than, I won't say like the world's moved on, but OpenStack does things a little different than how a lot of open source projects and whatnot do things. Like, I'll use an example of completely outside of what we're doing, but I've got a bunch of friends here that do drones and autonomous stuff, and none of those people are developers by any means, but it's all the community around that has sprung up as like open source, and now these non-software people are, electrical engineers allowed to code, and they don't know anything outside of GitHub as a result, right? And so that's a large thing there for communicating. And so I think we need to not just look at, I'll say IRC, but I think we have Storyboard, which has mostly been retired, but then we have Launchpad, and we haven't really moved everything over there. And some projects don't even really file things onto Launchpad or follow up with them because there's bugs that have lived there for ages, right? And so it's just a broader communication thing. As far as the docs go, at least internally, what folks have a issue is like the table of contents hides parts a lot, right? And the stock themes do a little better at that to show all those anyway. I can add those to the notes too.
Yeah, thanks. Jim?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Sorry for asking. My first time
No, totally.
speaking today. So I wanted to share some positive experiences with Matrix because I know it's come up a few times in this discussion, and it has limited use in the OpenStack community. But in the Zool community, we switched over to it completely. So we went cold turkey and had a cutover day and turned off our OFTC channel and told everybody to move to Matrix. And it's been a great experience. So not only has it sort of lowered the barrier for new folks coming into the community. We're not hearing those kinds of anecdotes that people talk about, like, oh, I need to figure out how to use IRC, and people don't. Oh, is there something?
We're not sure if it was your mic,
Oh.
but yep.
Is this still happening?
It is still happening. So it's not your mic then. If you tried muting. Oh, it's still happening. So please continue.
Okay, sorry about that. One more thing. All right, did that help?
Nope.
Oh, okay, very strange.
It's helped briefly.
For a second,
Yeah, briefly.
Could you
Okay,
please?
well, it may or may not be me,
insufferable.
but I'll try to muddle through this and then figure that out later. So yeah, so the I believe I was at positive experience, not getting those anecdotes from new contributors like, oh, I have to figure out IRC. The onboarding process with Matrix is a lot easier. It looks like these other apps that people are talking about, but also I've seen exactly the kind of thing that Julia mentioned earlier, which is that I have customers that I communicate with privately, to provide support to them, and I actually set up channels with them over Matrix, and so I have that thing that Julia described, which is I can flip over to a support channel with a customer and have a conversation with them about their sort of internal private things. And I do that in Matrix. It's encrypted. They're happy about, they can exchange secure information over it because of the end-to-end encryption. Obviously, if they have retention needs or things like that, they can add that on to the Matrix room. It's very flexible that way. And then I can just click over to the public Zool room, or at least for the moment, the OFTC IRC channels. So it's really reducing the friction for frankly bringing my commercial clients into the open source world too. So one of the selling points here is like, hey, we're going to set up this room for me to interact with you with, and by the way, you'll just be there in the Zool public room is right there too. And so if you want to jump in and participate there, that's right there. And I am seeing that kind of crossover. So I just wanted to share kind of this positive success story about how we can use Matrix to bridge that gap. And now, if it is me, I'm going to turn off the beeping.
Dimitri?
Yeah, I mean, I somehow feel that middle ground of like having IRC and matrix breach is, I mean, for me, it sounds most reasonable. While I agree that for most of people, for most of modern audience or modern developers, they would prefer something that they don't have to host a bouncer for. But at the same time, if we will take Zul as example, it's, I mean, if I open an element in web browser, it might take a time to find actually relevant context because like all my screen right now, if I open in Zul channel, is occupied with GaryBot. And there are like only 4 messages there on the whole screen. So and if I scroll to up, it get loaded as well. So I mean, it's also, I mean, if you're talking about productivity for me personally, it's also like not great. Probably it's a matter of getting proper metrics client. But like I tried, I guess so far 3 or 4, and all of them were weird in one way or another, including Thunderbird, including built-in NeoChat, and yeah. Yeah, might be a need to turn IRC mode indeed. But again, it's about like, I mean, breach and configuration, right? And how you're closing the gap, kind of, I guess. But I agree that like having metrics alternative is extremely important, and I think we need to have this better documented and better this information should be available for people.
Yeah, Julia?
So I'll note that the time, there is an operator's session starting up in a few minutes. I know, falling back to the discussion, interestingly enough, one of them did say Matrix was blocked as well. But, you know, we're not going to be able to meet everyone in the middle. So it's, I did really like Jim's feedback. Thank you, Jim. But also, I suspect this discussion might be useful if people joining the other channel, or at least shifting gears, because I think it will always help to kind of close that gap of communication between operators and users and developers. So that should be starting up pretty soon in the Mitaka room.
Yes, and thank you for that reminder. This is probably a good place to stop this discussion in this room and give folks a couple of minutes to move around and stretch and jump into the OS operators room. Your presence there is going to be really useful for the TC especially. This isn't going to be just about the communication tools. We might continue this discussion, or we might just hear some more things about it and stop. But there would be other things that would be interesting in the operators room that we should be paying attention to. So please do join us there if you have some time. It starts right after, and you have 1 minute now. So I'll actually stop talking. Let's leave the room. Thank you everyone for participating in this PTG. I'll see you on IRC.